Ray's decision to land the plane wasn't made lightly, but as he swung it around to the muddy field and descended through sheets of rain, he felt the thrill of adrenaline mixed with anxiety. He had put away the reckless days of his past, but something about the frantic figure waving by the highway stirred instincts he had thought lie dormant since his military days. Once on the ground, he quickly hopped out. The rain lashed against him as he made a beeline for the woman, a figure who looked both relieved and astonished. "Did you just land for me?" she called up, her voice barely audible above the storm. "Car trouble," he yelled, noting her drenched business attire. "Engine died. I was trying to call for help, but there's no signal," she responded, taking a step closer. With a quick assessment of her car and the weather, Ray knew he had to act swiftly. "Get what you need, and let's get back to my place before this storm gets worse." As they trudged back toward his plane, she pulled a laptop bag from her car's trunk, clutching it tightly against her body. Something about that bag caught Ray's attention. It seemed out of place and far too important for someone caught in a simple storm. "Who are you, anyway?" he asked, trying to be casual but instinctively probing for information. "Estate planning," she replied, a fleeting smile touching her lips. "Elise Morgan." Ray raised an eyebrow, unimpressed by the answer. Sounds like a cover for something else. Ignoring his scrutinizing look, she followed him into the cramped cockpit of the old AG Cat. He could feel her tension as he fastened his safety belt and kickstart the engine. The propeller sliced through rain, and with a jolt, they were airborne. Outside, the storm thickened, clouds darkening as thunder grumbled ominously overhead. "Hold on tight," he shouted over the noise of the engine, but her tense expression didn't waver. As they climbed, Ray could feel her eyes boring into him, weighing his worth. Meanwhile, an uneasy sensation gnawed at him. What was truly going on with this woman? He cut through the turbulent skies, but the unease didn't let up. The sudden screech of static in the cockpit made him jump. A warning chatter from his radio broke the uneasy silence. "Unidentified aircraft, you have entered restricted airspace. Change course immediately or face consequences." His heart raced as adrenaline surged through him again, and he glanced sideways at Elise. "Do you have any idea what's happening?" "Just keep flying," she insisted, her voice filled with urgency. Before he could respond, the radio buzzed again. "Crop Duster N5744C, this is U.S. Air Force Command. Repeat, change course or you will be intercepted." Ray's instincts kicked in. Whoever was tracking them wasn't just concerned, they were ready to take action. Without a word, he banked sharply towards the river valley below, looking for any cover. God knows what had just crossed his path. As the trees rushed past, they both held their breath against the looming threat in the clouds. His heart hammered. "Why are they after you?" he demanded, keeping one eye on the horizon for the encroaching jets. "Because I have something they want." Her voice edged on panic, but there was steel beneath her fear. Riding low over the treetops, Ray's mind raced. If anyone could get them out of this mess, it was his military past. "You need to tell me everything, Elise." She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "I was tracking a security breach within the defense agency. What's in that laptop? It matters. It's evidence. And now it's not just my life on the line." Thunder cracked above them, and just then, the shrill sound of an F-16 blared nearby. "Backwards. Now." Ray shouted, and instinctively, he hit the throttle, throwing the plane into an evasive maneuver. Elise gripped the edge of her seat as the fighter jet zipped past them, the pilot barely missing his mark. "Fixing the problem will be harder than I thought," Ray muttered under his breath. Her gaze flicked to him with determination. "We can't go back. They'll find us." Narrowing his eyes on the looming storm ahead, Ray gripped the controls and made another tight turn, hoping to lose the military jet. They couldn't turn back now. As Elise clutched her laptop bag tighter, he now knew this wasn't about a simple flight or even about merely rescuing a stranded motorist. It was about exposing a betrayal that could unravel everything they knew. And with that realization, Ray was pulled deeper into a conspiracy he never expected. Their lives were intertwined in ways he'd never fathomed. Whatever was in that bag changed everything, dragging him back into a life he thought he'd left behind. But one thing was certain, there would be no turning back, and their tumultuous journey had only just begun. Whatever was in that bag changed everything, dragging Ray back into a life he thought he'd left behind. In that moment, as the plane bucked through the turbulence, the reality bore down on him. Elise was not just another traveler caught in the storm. They were entangled in a dangerous game, and the stakes had never been higher. The F-16 reappeared in the distance, its engines roaring like an angry beast. As it approached, Ray swerved just above the treetops, relying on instinct honed during years of flying through hostile skies. With each violent gust, he had the sinking feeling they were being hunted. "Keep your head down," Ray shouted, squinting to assess the horizon. The trees below swayed wildly from the jet's wind. He couldn't shake the sensation they were running out of time. "Ray, focus." Elise's voice rose above the racket. The urgency in her tone was a reminder of the stakes. For a heartbeat, he pressed on the throttle, urging the AG-CAT faster, trying to gain ground. "If they catch us." "I know," he snapped back, glancing at her. Her laptop bag remained clutched tightly against her chest. He couldn't help but wonder again what secrets it held. "How did you get mixed up in this?" "I told you, the evidence," she started, but the interruption of another warning crackled through his radio. "Crop Duster N5744C, this is Sierra Alpha 36. You are ordered to land immediately. This is your last warning." Gripping the control yoke, Ray's heart pounded. He needed to think fast. Where could they go? The safe zones were now compromised. Glancing at Elise, he saw her jaw clenched, her eyes wide with fear and determination. "They are not just going to let us walk away," she said, voice steadying. "We need to break their hold on us." "I have a plan," Ray replied, his mind racing through his options. There was a grove of trees up ahead, a dense feature that could provide cover. If he could get them low enough, they might evade detection, at least momentarily. "Hang on." He lowered the plane, skimming the treetops, the air thickening with moisture and adrenaline. The F-16 locked onto them again, closing the distance, their pursuer's power palpable as Ray dodged left and right, the plane's wings almost brushing against the branches. "What's the plan?" Elise shouted. "Keep the bag close." Ray ordered. "If we go down, whatever you have in their needs, it could be the difference between stopping this or letting them win." Elise nodded, determination flaring in her eyes. "I understand." The F-16's pilot wouldn't give up easily. He could almost feel the tension drive through the air. Ray blocked the panic creeping into his chest, focusing instead on the control panel. They were nearing the grove now, and as he dove lower, the F-16 flew above, its shadow swallowing them whole. "Get ready," he warned. "This is going to be bumpy." Bracing himself, he leveled off just above the ground, feeling the cockpit shudder against the turbulence created by the jet above. They flew through the clearing in the trees, branches scraping against the sides of the AG-CAT. Just when he thought they might make it, the F-16 banked sharply to follow them. "Elise, they are right behind us." Ray's voice was tight, adrenaline gripping him anew. "Tan," she shouted, pointing ahead. "There's a river." Without hesitation, Ray veered toward the water. He could see the current rushing past, an opportunity to lose the pursuing jet. As they neared shore, he lowered the AG-CAT in a glide toward the river's edge, hoping to get beneath the canopy and into a place where they could afford a moment to think. The F-16 surged above them, darkening the sky with its presence. With a swift downward vector, Ray dove hard toward the riverbank, the engine roaring defiantly. Just as the tires grazed the muddy ground, Ray felt a violent jolt. He had made it, but not without risk. "Hold on," he yelled as the plane skidded, the force jarring them against their seats. Elise gripped her laptop even tighter. If they could only hide from aerial scrutiny long enough to breathe, there was still a chance. With the AG-CAT unmoving and the roar of the water drowning out everything else, Ray focused on keeping the aircraft steady. "We might have bought ourselves some time," he gasped. "Time? Or trouble?" Elise retorted, glancing around warily. Moments later, the F-16 zoomed overhead, circling as it searched for them. Its engines roared, piercing the air with urgency. Ray ducked instinctively as it flew low, his pulse quickening. "What do we do?" Elise's voice was firm, yet panic deepened her tone. "We wait it out. They may think we went down in the river. Keep low, And don't move, Ray commanded, squinting through the window, watching the jet circle again. Seconds felt like hours as they held their breath. Ray's heart thundered. He could feel the weight of Elise's eyes on him, waiting for reassurance. Together, they crouched in the cockpit, bracing for whatever would come next, the peace of the moment belying the storm brewing both outside and in their lives. After circling once more, the F-16 climbed higher, disappearing back into the clouds. There was a chance, but the danger wasn't over. The silence hung heavy, and Ray locked eyes with Elise. "What's next?" she asked, her voice low. "We need to secure the laptop," Ray said, glancing around. "When the coast is clear, we need to figure out who's behind all of this." As Elise nodded, Ray caught a glimpse of something shadowy amid the trees. The threat wasn't from above anymore. They weren't alone. "Stay low," he hissed, every instinct screaming that they weren't out of danger yet. The mystery only deepened, and Ray realized that what had begun as an ordinary day had spiraled into a battle for their very lives. The shadows moved closer, and it soon became clear that their journey was far from over. In the heart of the storm, alliances would be tested, truths revealed, and the challenge of survival would be their only lead through the growing chaos. The shadows moved closer, and it soon became clear that their journey was far from over. Ray's heart raced as he focused on the approaching figures through the rain-slicked window. He had no doubt they were looking for them, drawn by the downed crop duster. "Who's there?" Elise whispered, her voice tight with fear. "Can't tell," Ray replied, squinting. "But it doesn't look friendly." The figures crept slowly through the trees, communicating in hushed tones. A light glimmered off something metallic, perhaps weapons or equipment, making Ray's skin prick with anxiety. Their only hope lay in remaining undetected for now. "We need a plan," Elise said, her tone urgent but steady. "If they find us here, then we fight," Ray concluded, feeling a mix of dread and resolve settle in his gut. "But let's try to avoid that." He scanned the surroundings, spotting a shallow ditch lined with thick brush just a few yards away. "We can hide under that until they pass." "Right behind you," she whispered. With quick, cautious movements, they both slipped out of the cockpit and into the muddy earth, hoping stealth would serve them better than valor. They crouched low, the sound of their breath masked by the steady patter of rain. The figures were now closer, illuminated by the dim light filtering through the canopy overhead. Ray's mind raced, trying to assess the threat. Were they mercenaries? Local law enforcement? He had no way to know. Suddenly, one of the figures, tall and imposing, moved into view, closer to where Ray and Elise hid. Ray's heart pounded. He recognized the menacing stance and tactical gear. They were not just here for a casual search. "Check over there," shouted the lead figure, pointing toward the riverbank. The plane went down. "They can't be far." Ray and Elise exchanged panicked glances, knowing their cover was tenuous. Every second counted. "Let's move now," Ray whispered, beckoning for her to follow. He'd rather take sneaky flight than run the risk of being caught. They moved silently along the outskirts of the grove, inching toward a cluster of rocks that offered better concealment. Just as they reached it, a sudden shout broke the tension. There, behind the tree line. Elise took a sharp breath as they ducked behind the rocks, now mere feet away from danger. Ray peeked around the edge, heart racing as he tried to spot where the threat was coming from. The figures seemed to split up, endeavoring to cover more ground. "Reckon the plane's still intact?" one man asked. Ray recognized the voice immediately. It belonged to Sheriff Miller, a man he had known for years. "I'll check the cockpit," came a second voice. Ray felt his stomach drop. "You watch the perimeter." Elise's eyes widened. "We can't let them find that laptop. Not ever." "We won't," Ray assured her, adrenaline coursing through him. He needed to act. "When it sounds like they are focused on the AGCAT, we'll make a run for it." Before he could finish, Sheriff Miller yelled out, "They're in here somewhere. Search the area thoroughly." Ray shot a look at Elise. "Ready?" She nodded, steeling herself. "I'll follow your lead." As the sheriff moved closer, Ray pushed off the rocky cover, gazing toward the looming trees surrounding their hiding spot. In a flash, he bolted, moving quietly yet quickly between the dappled shadows, guiding Elise along with him. When they reached the thicker part of the woods, they crouched again, hearts pounding. From this vantage point, they could still see the sheriff and his men poking through their wrecked plane, engines humming with official authority. "Don't let them near that bag," Ray murmured. "It's too valuable." Suddenly, the sheriff's head snapped up, scanning the vicinity, intuition kicking in. The last thing they needed was to be on the radar. "We should split up," Elise suggested. "It'll help." No, Ray shook his head vehemently. "Dividing ourselves will only make them more suspicious. If we stick together, we have a better chance to escape." The tension hung in the air thicker than the rain, but Elise surrendered her suggestion, understanding the gravity of their situation. They continued deeper into the woods, the sounds of breathing heavy against the backdrop of rustling leaves. "Where to now?" she whispered. Ray looked around, realization striking him. "There's a network of caves nearby, old limestone shafts the locals often use. We can hide there until we figure out our next move." They pressed on, staying as silent as possible, using the dense foliage as cover, until they stumbled upon the mouth of the cave. It was dark, the entrance shadowed and unwelcoming, but they had no choice. "Go," Ray urged, shoving Elise gently ahead of him. They crept inside, careful not to make a sound as the rain continued to pour outside, providing an excellent cover for their movement. The cave was damp and cool, but it offered crucial safety. As they settled against the rough stone wall, Ray heard the distant sounds of shouting from the search party outside. His heart raced. Would they find the AG cat? "Do you think they'll find us?" Elise asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not if we keep our heads down," Ray replied, breathing deeply to calm his nerves. "They'll focus on the plane. For now, we're safe." Minutes stretched into an eternity as they listened to the chaos outside. Voices echoed, footsteps pounded against the mud, and muffled shouts filled the air. "We need to come up with a plan," Elise said finally, her voice steadying as the panic faded. "What happens when they find the plane?" Ray weighed his options. If I could get a line to the outside or find something with an actual plan, he was cut short when, of all things, he heard an engine hum outside. "Did you hear that?" Elise asked, her eyes widening. Ray pressed a finger to his lips, signaling her to be quiet. The engine noise grew closer, a vehicle creeping up the muddy pathway leading to their hiding place. "Sheriff must have called in backup," Ray murmured, his heart racing. He edged forward, inching toward the cave's entrance to get a glimpse of what was happening. Through a gap between the stones, he could see the glow of headlights reflected off the trees, illuminating a group of armed men, the same ones who had been chasing them, now waiting, presumably for the sheriff's orders. "This isn't good," Ray whispered. "We're outnumbered." "Wait, there's someone else." Elise's eyes narrowed as she spotted another vehicle, a black SUV pulling up alongside the sheriff's truck. A cloaked figure in a dark suit emerged, looking every inch like the suits Ray detested, government types who played in shades of gray. "Who?" Ray started. "Can't tell," Elise interrupted, her voice tense. "But they are definitely not here to help." Ray felt heat rise within him. If that figure was connected to the conspiracy, they might be instrumental in controlling the whole operation. "Whatever happens, we can't let them take that laptop," he vowed, determination surging through him. "How can we fight against that?" Elise questioned, her brows furrowed in concern. Ray's mind raced with possibilities. "We don't fight, we outsmart them." With time slipping through their fingers, inspiration struck him. "I have an idea." "What is it?" "We draw them away from the cave." He didn't finish the thought aloud, but he could see the flicker of understanding flash in Elise's eyes. "Right. We create a diversion," she concluded. Just then, one of the armed men turned sharply, casting a wary glance toward the woods. Ray's heart skipped. They couldn't afford a slip-up now. As thoughts honed in on the growing tension in the air, Elise took out her phone, despite her better judgment. "We can fake an SOS signal," she suggested, her face determined yet anxious. She quickly began typing. "No signal, remember." Ray reminded her. "But we can make some noise to get their attention." "Got it," she replied, retrieving a small emergency flare from her bag. "It might be enough to lure them away." "Great thinking," Ray admitted, feeling a rush of adrenaline. When they are distracted, we make our move. Elise nodded, setting the flare at the mouth of the cave, calculating the angle so the burst would erupt outward. We'll need a countdown, she said. Ray suppressed his nerves and started counting quietly in his mind. He peered into the dim light of the cave, nerves aflame, waiting for the perfect opportunity. Outside, tension thickened as the armored figures grew impatient, glancing around. 3, 2, 1. Ray said, and Elise ignited the flare. Bright orange light burst into the night, soaring into the sky and illuminating the forest around the cave. Fire reflected off eyes, momentarily blinding the search team as they turned toward the dazzling light. Go! Ray yelled, tugging Elise's arm. They dashed back into the deeper part of the cave, sprinting through the dimness as the sounds of commotion erupted around them. Ray couldn't tell for sure if anyone had seen them yet, but urgency propelled them forward into the shadows, giving them a chance to slip away amid the chaos. The crack of sparks echoed behind them, fiery light swirling through the mouth of the cave, but they pressed on, hoping to find their escape. As they reached the far end, Ray felt a surge of defiance. They might be hunted, but they were not helpless. Their battle wasn't just for survival anymore. It was a fight against a conspiracy that could bring down everything worth protecting. The opening widened before them, leading to a back exit of the cave. "We're almost there," Ray urged. He picked up the pace, heart pounding fiercely as he reached for Elise's hand, willing her to run faster. They plunged into the night, determined to escape the tightening noose behind them, unaware of the forces lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike. The footsteps continued to circle the cabin, their hushed whispers carrying on the wind. Ray felt a mix of fear and adrenaline flood his system. He pivoted toward Elise, eyes locked on her. "We stay quiet. If they find us." Elise nodded, clutching the laptop tighter as she melded into the shadows of the dimly lit room. "The plan is simple," Ray whispered. "If they break in, we distract them long enough for you to escape with the laptop. Or we could fight back." "No, we can't." He cut her off, urgency lacing his voice. "It's too risky. We have to be smart." Outside, the leaders of the search party called out to one another, their voices tightening the noose of tension surrounding Ray and Elise. "Did you hear that?" one of them said. "There's something moving inside." Ray's heart raced. "They know we're here. We have to move." He glanced around the cabin, eyes landing on a rickety old window at the back, partially covered by dust and an old, tattered curtain. "That's our way out." Elise quickly moved toward the window, stepping carefully to avoid the creaky floorboards. She peeked through the thin gap. "It's clear," she breathed, "but we can't make too much noise." "Then go first," Ray urged, confident she'd make the leap. "I'll follow right after." With a sharp nod, she lifted the window, and as it groaned, they both held their breath. She squeezed through, landing softly outside, her eyes scanning the surroundings. "Now," she whispered, urging him on. Ray shoved the window wider, his heart racing as he slipped out. He landed next to her in a crouched position, the cool night air washing over him. He could still hear the voices of their pursuers, growing bolder and more frantic. "Where do we go from here?" Elise asked, glancing back toward the cabin. "Head south toward the creek. If we keep low and move fast, we can get around them," Ray instructed. They ducked under the branches, moving through the thick underbrush, staying within the cloak of darkness. The sounds of their pursuers faded slightly, suggesting the searchers were still preoccupied with their hunt. But just as Ray felt a surge of hope, a flashlight beam burst through the trees nearby, illuminating the area. They froze, heartbeats echoing in their ears as the beam swung around, searching. "Over here," one of the figures shouted. "They went this way." "Run," Ray hissed, grabbing Elise's hand and pulling her deeper into the woods. They sprinted through the darkness. Ray focused on the sound of the creek. If they could reach it, they could hide in the water or use the current to buy some time, maybe even navigate downstream to safety. The beam of light continued to flash around them, the guttural sounds of branches snapping and voices converging closer. "Don't let them escape." Ray felt panic surging within him. "We need to split." "Hold on." Elise interrupted, pulling him towards a massive fallen tree. We can hide there. They plunged behind the decaying log, pressing their bodies as closely as they could against the damp earth. The beam danced around, their shadows flickering against the trunk, yet somehow they remained unseen. Did we lose them? Elise whispered, holding her breath. Not yet. Ray strained to listen as the search party drew closer, their footsteps crunching through the leaves. Keep an eye out, whispered one of the men. They can't have gone too far. Spread out. Fear gripped Ray, tightening his chest. He glanced at Elise, whose eyes were wide with alarm but fierce with determination. If they find us, we'll have to move quickly, Ray said, biting back against the anxiety threatening to overwhelm him. But before they could formulate a new plan, a sudden rustle echoed from behind. Then a voice shouted again, check the creek. Ray's stomach dropped. They needed to act, and fast. Now, he said, taking a deep breath. On my count, we're going to bolt for the creek. Okay, she whispered, steeling herself. 1, 2, 3. With that, they sprang from behind the log and sprinted low, branches slapping against them as they dashed through the underbrush. They raced toward the sound of rushing water, adrenaline flooding their limbs. Just as they reached the edge, the beam of a flashlight swung around, flushing them out. There they are, came a shout, igniting Ray's instinct to push forward. Get them. They launched into the creek, the cold water hitting Ray like ice. Elise gasped beside him as they struggled momentarily with the current, but they fought against it, using the flow to propel them forward. Stay low. Ray urged, crouching under the surface as much as possible, glancing back to see the silhouettes closing in, voices piercing through the night. The moonlight shimmered on the water, a narrow path leading them downstream and away from the searchers. Ray could hear their shouts behind, echoing off the trees as the pursuers scrambled to the bank, unsure how to follow in the dark. Keep going. Elise shouted, the current slowing their progress as they fought for a foothold on the rocky bed. We can't stop. Ray matched her determination, pushing against the current with every ounce of strength he had. Look, there. He pointed to a small alcove formed by overhanging rocks, hidden just down the way and partially masked by some thick brush. Do you think they'll check there? Elise asked, glancing back over her shoulder. Let's hope not. We need a moment to breathe, Ray replied, guiding them toward the point where the water met the stone. They pulled themselves up onto the ledge, hearts racing as they curled up against the rock, praying they wouldn't be discovered. The sound of their pursuers echoed behind, voices murmuring in confusion. If they start looking in the water, Elise whispered, looking fearfully at the rushing stream. Ray nodded, his heart hammering. They might think we've drifted further downstream. We hold tight until they move on. The moment stretched, each second full of suspense as they listened closely, every sound amplified in the silence. Ray's breath came fast, the weight of the laptop pressing against his body. Finally, the echoes began to drift away, the voices growing fainter as the search party moved further down the waterway. Did they give up? Elise asked quietly, scanning the surroundings. I don't know, but we can't stay here long, Ray whispered back, careful to keep his voice low. Once they regroup, we have no idea how much time we have left. As the quiet of night wrapped around them, Ray felt a strange blend of hope and anxiety. The darkness felt almost comforting now, with the sound of the water whispering a promise of escape while shadows played tricks on his mind. They could use the creek to weave through the landscape undetected, but fear of being recaptured lingered in his gut. Let's wait a few more minutes, then we'll make a run for it. Minutes turned into an agonizing eternity before Ray finally dared to peek over the ledge. The darkness surrounding them remained tranquil, with only the sound of water slicing through the stillness. I think it's clear, he said, his voice a soft hush. Elise nodded, resolve shining in her eyes. Then let's go. They slid back down into the creek, quickly getting their bearings. Heart pounding, Ray led the way, following the water downstream. With every silent stroke, they moved away from the danger, the current carrying them along as they navigated through a world that had morphed into a nightmare. Under the stars, they pressed on, knowing the journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but together, they would find a way. And whatever dangers lay in wait, they would face them united, determined to overturn the darkness that had threatened their lives.